All right. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
All right. A little bit of news. The new book is out.
Okay.
It is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
Oh,
Not Barnes and Bozo, Barnes and Noble.
okay.
Okay. And it is available hard copy or ebook. So if
That's a thick one, Phil.
it's 700 pages.
If I can read that one.
Yeah. I'm not sure I can either. It's Matthew to Acts and some of the extras you get on it. See, unlike the movies, you put the extras in there if you get the DVD. Some of the extras you get are in the first chapter. I go through how we got the New Testament. So from oral tradition to writing to church councils. Okay, so how we got that. And in the back, I have 4 appendices. That's right, appendices.
Sounds right.
If it's not right, it is now. So, and the 4 appendices are what did John the Baptist think about Jesus? He believed Jesus was God. The Christ was God, therefore Jesus was God. I have Passover, a little thing on Passover, a thing on crucifixion, and the final appendix is evidence for the resurrection of Christ. So you get more than just Matthew to Acts. That's why it's 700 pages. Although Matthew took like 150 pages to do. I'm sure Matthew's up there going, oh man, why?
I did it in a short amount of time.
Yeah, I did it shorter than you did. Come on. All right, we are still in Genesis. We are still in Genesis. I love Genesis. If you don't have Genesis down, you're going to have issues with the rest of the Bible. So what did we talk about last week? Anybody remember?
Lineage.
Lineage, Abram and Lot separated, right? We had the lineage that goes from Shem all the way down to Abram.
Surveying the promised land.
What?
Surveying the promised land.
Surveying the promised land? Yeah, Abram. God said, hey, Abram, I'm giving this to you. You walk the length and breadth of it. And what was the purpose of that?
Set boundaries.
Yeah. Whenever someone in that culture was about to take over a piece of land or buy a piece of land, they would walk it and set the boundaries for that land. And so that's what Abram was doing. And then he separated with Lot. Lot took Sodom area. And then God said, look, north, south, east, and west, or northeast, west, whatever, do a circle. And it's all going to be yours. That included what Lot just took, didn't it? So Lot is now off in the area around Sodom with his sheep.
He chose the best land.
He chose the best land, and Abram just let him do it because Abram loves his family. That's something we're going to keep seeing throughout these passages. All right, so this time we are on chapter 14. I'm going to drink. Good, I didn't spill it all over myself like I usually do. All right. Chapter 14, verse 1. At the time when Amraphel was king of Shinar, Shinar, by the way, is Babylon, Arioch, king of Elasar, Kedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of Goyim. These kings went to war against Bera, king of Sodom, Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemaber, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar. Okay, Zoar is the other name for Bela. We don't know what the name of the king is. Apparently, the writer didn't feel that was important, or they just didn't know. So for 12 years, they had been subject to Kedorlaomer, but in the 13th year, they rebelled. So here's what's going on. You have these kings from the east. I'll explain to you where they are here in a minute. You have Kedorlaomer. I wish he'd had an easier name to say. Kedorlaomer of Elam. He is the main person. He is the one who has had these people subject for 12 years. Okay. Amraphel of Shinar, which is Babylon. Arioch of Elasar, and title of Goim. And then you have the kings of Canaan that they're coming against because they've rebelled. And that's Bera of Sodom, Bersha of Gomorrah, Shinab of Admah, Shemeber of Zeboim, and then the king of Zoar. Okay, so you have 5 kings of Canaan, which are really smaller than these 4 kings coming against them. So these kings are coming from, this is where Elam is right up in here on the east side of the Tigris. All right, down here's the Persian Gulf. So it basically follows, Babylon is here inside between the 2 rivers, and then the others just kind of follow up along the rivers. All right, so they're all coming from here into here. We don't usually think about someone having that large of a territory at this time. I mean, it seems kind of early for someone to be ruling all the way from this side of the Tigris all the way into here and having them subject to him. But that's what Kedorlaomer has done. Okay, this king of Elam. So these guys over here have decided they're going to rebel. And so you have Zoar here, you have Sodom and Gomorrah here, and I don't know where the other one was. Other 2 are. But they're all in this little area here, just south of the Dead Sea. All right. Verse 5. In the 14th year, so in the 13th year they rebelled. So it took this guy a year to get his forces amassed, and here they come. In the 14th year, Kedorlaomer and the kings allied with him went out and defeated the Rephaites in Ashtaroth, Karnaim, the Zuzites in Ham, the Emites in Shava, Kiriathim, and the Horites in the hill country of Seir, as far as El Paran, near the desert. All right, so they're taking out the Rephaites, which are up here. Sea of Galilee is right here. Rephaites are up in this section here, okay? The Zuzites are east of the Jordan River, up in Ham area. Amites are down here, across from the Dead Sea. Horites are down here south, okay? So they're moving from north to south, taking out these kings and these areas. Verse 7, then they turned back and went to En Mishpat, that is Kadesh, and they conquered the whole territory of the Amalekites as well as the Amorites who were living in Hazazon Tamar. So they got down here to the south. They got all the way down to Elah, which is, if you can kind of see right there, you probably can't, is the tip of the Red Sea. That's as far as you can go without swimming. So they decided to go back up north. They got Kadesh Barnea, Kadesh, and they took out the people in Tamar. So they are moving up here towards these guys, all right, wanting to take them out. Now I want us to notice something that we have been seeing as we go through Genesis. It's a progression of oppression. So in chapter 3, humans rebelled against God. Right, that was the first domino to fall. Okay. Chapter 4, Cain kills Abel. That was an act of aggression and oppression. Cain kills Abel. And then also in chapter 4, Lamech kills a man. And he kills him just because he injured him. Cain killed because he was jealous. Lamech decides to take justice into his own hands and kill the person who injured him. So that leads to an oppressive society. If I can kill somebody just because they injure me, that's kind of oppressive, or they offend me. Chapter 6, people were completely evil. Remember that? Right before the flood, people were absolutely evil. How much oppression do you think was going on there? And then I'm sorry, my little pointer got away from me. Okay, so chapter 11, there was unity at Babel, but what was that unity based on? Anybody remember?
Right.
Pride. So there was this pride, there was this sinfulness there. Chapter 14 now, we are getting oppression for 12 years. These people were oppressed by this king of Elam. And now we're going to fight wars in order to keep that oppression going. This all goes back to Genesis 3:16, where God told Eve that Adam is going to be over you. To set up the sin that Adam and Eve did, set up this fertile land, I guess you could call it, for oppression within humans. I am going stronger than you, so I am better than you. You are going to be beneath me. And it wasn't just male and female. Now it is Elam is stronger than Zoar and Sodom, etc. So you guys aren't don't have as much worth as we do. You deserve to be oppressed. Okay. So we can see this progression of oppression as we go through this book. All right, now the fun part. Verse 8. Because the battles are always the fun part. I mean, if you're watching a movie, the battles are always the good part. It's the lead up to it. It's like, oh, whatever. Fast forward. So here we go. Verse 8. Then the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar, marched out and drew up their battle lines in the valley of Siddim against Kedorlaomer, king of Elam, Tidal, king of Goyim, Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Elasar. 4 kings against 5. You would think the 5 would have a better chance than the 4. The problem was the 4 had the bigger armies. So they are coming up and they are gathering in, there we go. They're gathering in this area here, okay? There's a valley down in through here south of the Dead Sea, and they're all gathering in it, right? I know these maps are not that great, but they're all I could find. Because if you're going to get the whole of Israel and try to do it this direction, it doesn't work. I end up with Dead Sea, that's it, in there. So we've got these. If you really want to see the maps well, look at the video when it comes out, all right? So the Valley of Siddim, south of the Dead Sea is where they're at. And where were we? We are at 10. Now the Valley of Siddim was full of tar pits, and when the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some of the men fell into them, and the rest fled to the hills. So the rebels are defeated. And this little tar pits thing is a little blurb we need to recognize. There are tar pits around Sodom and Gomorrah. Tar burns, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. So if you have fire coming down from heaven hitting these tar pits, what's going to happen? Yeah, everything's going to burn. So just kind of foreknowledge there. But what was happening when these guys got into the battle, they ran. They were defeated and they ran and they fell into the tar pits. And they're like those poor dinosaurs that got into the tar pits, and now we have their fossils. Yeah. But they ran. So these 5 kings are routed.
The tar pits are gone now because they burned up during this.
Probably some of them are gone because the Dead Sea has expanded. You see, there's this little area here it's kind of damp, but the Dead Sea goes to here and then it pops back up here. The Dead Sea has expanded because there's no place else for the water and salt to go. It just keeps moving down. That's why some people believe that Sodom and Gomorrah are actually under the southern part of the Dead Sea now. So verse 11, the 4 kings seized all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their food, and then they went away. So Sodom and Gomorrah is plundered. They also carried off Abram's nephew Lot and his possessions, since he was living in Sodom. He was living in Sodom. He was no longer being a shepherd. He didn't need the land now that he had asked for. He was living in Sodom. He had become a city dweller. Hayseed becomes a city dweller. But since he's in Sodom, he and his family end up getting captured. His possessions get taken. And so these kings now have him. Verse 13. A man who had escaped came and reported this to Abram, the Hebrew. Now, Abram was living near the great trees of Mamre, the Amorite, a brother of Eshcol and Aner, all of whom were allied with Abram.
Is that the first time we see the word Hebrew?
I think so. Yeah. First time he's mentioned as a Hebrew. And I'm not sure why he's called a Hebrew. No, Jan, it's not because he makes coffee.
Oh, well, that's what I was thinking.
That's what you're thinking, yes.
And where have you guys been? Because there's no. All these minutes.
We're not doing coffee, sorry. All right, so
Sounds like we have a volunteer.
so
You might not like.
We'll coach you along the way.
yes. So Abram is up here. It's near Hebron. Mamre is near Hebron. Okay. So it's up here, kind of, there's the Dead Sea, he's right across from the Dead Sea. So this guy, this survivor, ran from down here and went up to Abram. He must have known Abram's relationship with Lot. So he must have known Lot. And so he spills the beans, tells Abram, hey, these kings came in, they now have your nephew Lot. Meanwhile, the kings are moving up on this red line here, up north. All right. Verse 14. When Abram heard that his relative had been taken captive, he called out the 318 trained men born in his household and went in pursuit as far as Dan. So, 5 kings with their armies couldn't defeat these 4 armies. Abram's going to go after him with 318 men. That's like a flea coming after a dog. All right. They went in pursuit as far as Dan, and Dan is up here, way up here. It's 120 miles. He follows these guys 120 miles. Finally meets them at Dan. Now, during the night, Abram divided his men to attack them, and he routed them, pursuing them as far as Hobah, north of Damascus. So he takes them another, 40 miles. Up here, you see these little red lines going off in different directions. He keeps chasing them and attacking them all the way up to Damascus, a little north of Damascus. So another 40 miles. He harasses these people. Verse 16, he recovered all the goods and brought back his relative Lot and his possessions together with the women and the other people. So he gets everything back that these kings had taken, right? So Abram wins. Now, this is Dan, Laish, as the original name of it, okay? The other city of Dan is around the hill and has big stone walls. This, if you notice, I showed you the other few weeks ago, has brick walls, mud brick walls, right? And so this is the wall of Dan, or Laish. And this, of course, is a siege ramp. No, not kidding.
Better take it.
Yeah, they're going to take it. No, that's just the scaffolding so they can work. Now, the interesting thing about the name Dan being in this passage is that this city was not named Dan. It was always Laish until after the conquest of Canaan by Israel. The Danites went north and took Laish and renamed it Dan after their ancestor. So this shows us that the books of Moses and other books, because it's an oral society, they wanted to keep everything up to date. They didn't want to change anything, but they wanted to keep it up to date. So someone reading this later and seeing Laish, well, where's Laish? Well, it's Dan. So they just went ahead and changed it over to Dan. It's okay. You can call it Dan. It would be like saying the seeds of St. Petersburg in Russia instead of the seeds of Leningrad in the Soviet Union. Same place, same city, same country even, but you just have a different name on it. So we do see that there is some editing that goes on as the Bible goes along. But it does not change the fact that Dan is still Aish, right? And by the way, I do have a rock from there, a little bitty rock. I only took things out of Israel I could put in my pockets. Easier to get through customs that way. And quite honestly, the people of Israel are glad if you could take a rock with you. They've got too many rocks in there. So I just have a little rock from there. And it's easy to imagine, oh, Abram may have stepped on this. No, probably not, but still, it's fun. All right, possibility. So, verse 17. Now, after Abram returned from defeating Chedorlaomer and the kings allied with him, the king of Sodom came out to meet him in the valley of Shaveh. That is the King's Valley. So, we're not sure exactly where the King's Valley is, but it is probably somewhere up near Salem. So, along the river here, up in this area, all right? Towards the middle of the map. So the king of Sodom comes out to meet Abram, which tells us a couple of things. Number one, he runs faster than his men because he survived. And a coward.
Kings abandoned him.
What?
Most kings had something faster to get away.
Yes. And he had traveled all the way up to here from the battle area here. He wasn't going after these guys. He's not that dumb, but he must be wanting to see what is going on with Abram. I'll get there. So if you'll notice, Abram comes back down from Damascus. He comes down this way, and right here is a good crossing. That's how the king knew where Abram probably would be. He was going to have to cross right there, cross the Jordan right there. Okay, so they're near Salem. Interestingly, Moses mentions the king of Sodom, but then in the next verse, he does away with the king of Sodom. He just says, never mind, he's here, but ignore him for a minute. Verse 18, then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High and blessed Abram, saying, blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. Then Abram gave him 1/10 of everything. All right, so put away the king of Sodom. Here comes this king of Salem, which is really Jerusalem. Salem, peace. Peace, Jerusalem. So here comes this king of Salem named Melchizedek. And we saw Melchizedek when we studied Hebrews. Okay. The writer of Hebrews goes on and on about how Jesus is like Melchizedek. He just pops up here. We've never seen him before. We won't see him again. He just pops up. He is the king of Salem. He is a priest of God Most High. Now, honestly, in that culture, it could have been any god. It could have been Ra from Egypt. I mean, he was the high god. It could have been any kind of god, but he is the priest of God Most High. He comes out and provides food, wine, and blessings to Abram and his men. So, very giving person. And then he blesses Abram. And in his blessing, notice what he says. He describes God as the creator of heaven and earth. So he is worshiping the same God Abram is worshiping, the creator of heaven and earth. So remember that. We have somebody else other than Abram in Canaan who is worshiping the true God. Now, if he is a priest, then he has to have people beneath him, right? Who are also worshipers. So there is more than just Melchizedek worshiping the one true God. So Abram and his family, and Melchizedek and his his group are all worshiping the one true God. So there is a witness and a testimony in Canaan to who God is. That will become important later.
Most mysterious person in the Bible.
One of the most mysterious people in the Bible. Yeah. So Abram then gives a tithe, a tenth of the spoils to Melchizedek. Now, this was something that was just done with kings coming back from war. They would give a tenth of the spoils to the priest of their God. And so Abram understands that Melchizedek is a priest of his God. And so he gives a tenth of the spoils to Melchizedek. Okay. Verse 21. The king of Sodom said to Abram, give me the people and keep the goods for yourself. So here comes the king of Sodom back into the picture. He's saying, look, just give me the people back and you can keep everything else that you took. I'm fine with that. Yeah, think about that for a second. The king of Sodom was beaten. He should have nothing, period. But magnanimously, he is going to allow Abram to keep what Abram went and fought for and won. This guy's a real tool, isn't he? I mean, think about it. Goodness. Yes, you can keep the stuff you fought for. I didn't win. I didn't really fight for it. You can keep that. It's okay. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, with raised hand, I have sworn an oath to the Lord, God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. See, same God that Melchizedek has. That I will accept nothing belonging to you, not even a thread or the strap of a sandal, so that you will never be able to say, I made Abram rich. I'll accept nothing but what my men have eaten and the share that belongs to the men who went with me, to Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre. Let them have their share. So these three kings, kind of, who were around and were allied with Abram that we saw earlier, had gone with him. And Abram says they get their portion. They fought for it. They get it. But I'm giving you all of mine because I don't want anything to do with you. I think this kind of already is speaking to the character of the king of Sodom. Not only was he ignored to start out with, but now Abram doesn't want anything to do with him. He doesn't want this guy to come up and say, yeah, I know Abram. I gave him all he had. I gave him all this stuff. And he says, no, I'm giving it all back to you except for what the men earned because they fought for it. And obviously the part he gave back to God, he's not getting that back either. But everything else, Abram's given back to the king of Sodom. And yes, you can have the people because I don't want them. You can even have Lot back if you want him.
Isn't this kind of like salvation is free? You something like not for works, for you can boast about it.
Mm-mm.
Uh-huh.
No. It has nothing to do with salvation.
Right, but I mean similar.
No, because what the king of Sodom would want to boast about is, yeah, I'm allied with Abram. He beat those kings, and I gave him all this money, and he beat those kings. It's like I beat him, you know. I am the victor because I'm part of Abram. Yeah, Abram just wants nothing to do with, no connection at all with Sodom, king of Sodom. All right, chapter 15. After this, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward. Okay, so after all this goes on, Abram gets back to between Hebron and Ai, where he was staying, and God comes to him in a vision. And of course, the first thing that God says is, don't be afraid, because if you see God or any representation of God, you're going to be afraid. Okay. And he says, don't be afraid. I'm your shield. I'm your protector, Abram. I'm the one who actually went in and took out those armies. And I think Abram knew that. That's why he went ahead and gave a tenth to Melchizedek. He knew who had actually fought the battle for him, and that was God. I'm your shield. I'm your very great reward. And there's some question as to how this is worded. It's either I'm your great reward or your reward will be very great. One of the two. Either way, God is giving the reward, but isn't it better that God is his reward? I mean, he gets to be with God. What a reward. That's awesome. So he is trying to calm him down and say, look, I've got you. I'm going to give you your reward. I am your reward, but you're going to get more than that. Verse 2. But Abram said, Sovereign Lord, what can you give me since I remain childless, and the one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus? And Abram said, You have given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir. Then the word of the Lord came to him, This man will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir. So what's going on here? Abram says, thank you very much, God. You're going to give me this land. You're going to give me all these riches and everything. That's great. But I have no one to pass it down to. It's meaningless to me at that point. He says, the only person I have is, because of the customs of the time, he could consider this son of the slave in his household, that was born in his household, as his son, which tells us that Abram went along with the custom that slaves were property at that time. And you owned not only the father, but the son. And so he could take this child away from his family and make him his son. We'll have a little longer discussion on that later. So he says, hey, I've got a solution to this. I'll just make Eliezer my son. And God says, no, nope, 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 stop. This man will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir. So God says, Abram, you are going to have a child of your own. God probably should have been a little more specific on that, considering what happens later. But at this point, he said, you are going to have a child. Okay. Verse 5, he took him outside and said, look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them. Then he said to him, so shall your offspring be. So he takes Abram outside. They must have been in a tent when this was going on. But he takes Abram outside and he says, hey, look up, count the stars if you can. With all of our technology, we can't even count all the stars. So there's going to be an uncountable number of descendants for Abram. Okay, that just means there's large numbers. And these will be physical descendants. So Abram will have a child, that child will have another child, that child will have 12 children, which really starts the thing going. And then we're off from there. So physical descendants, you're going to have a lot of children. Also, if you're going to get that many, I mean, he was pretty sure Sarai wasn't going to be whipping out children at 80 years old. Okay. So if you're going to get that many, it means there's going to be longevity to your family. So he's not talking just one person, one son. He's talking generation after generation after generation coming along and being descendants of Abram. But there's also a second part of this. That's just the physical descendants. When you get into the New Testament, the writer of Hebrews and Paul start talking about spiritual descendants, being spiritual descendants of Abram. And so you add those into the mix, and we have more stars being added.
That's us.
Yeah, you're a star, Drew. So you have all these spiritual descendants then who are coming and being a part of Abram's family. We're all stars. Verse 6, Abram believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. So he believed God, and Abram's belief showed that he was in line with who God is as creator and sustainer of the universe, and the one who upholds his promises. This belief showed that Abram had the correct understanding about God, and this is righteousness. When we have a correct understanding about God and live according to that understanding, we are righteous. Abram understood who God was and that God could do this. And God said, all right, that's where I want you to be. That's where I designed you to be. It's in line with me. Verse 7, he also said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans. Now, okay, when you read something like that, you expect the next thing to be, I brought you in this world and I can take you out. That's not this time. I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to take possession of it. But Abram said, Sovereign Lord, how can I know that I will gain possession of it? Now, he's wavering, okay? God said, look, I'm the one that did this. I'm affirming my promise. And Abram has doubts. Here he's been counted righteous. He understands who God is, but he still has doubts. And once again, isn't that great? Here we see one of the warts on Abram. And we have the same thing. It's like, okay, God, I know you're calling me to do this. Really? Are you sure that's what you want me to do? Are you going to be able to do it? Just a short story. So I have been toying for years, literally, with, do I want to do another book or don't I? And finally, God said, do it. I said, okay. Is it really going to, I mean, how's this going to work? Is it, and hesitancy. And things just right on through. No problems. So you can still have, even after years and years and years of being with God, when he calls you to do something, you can still kind of hesitate. Do I really want to do that? I mean, there's a lot of work to do these books. But then again, there's a lot of joy in doing them too. I have fun doing them because I have fun teaching you all. So, everybody here, I'm sure God is calling you to do something, and you may be a little hesitant. Sit down with God and think about it. God could have told Abram, well, forget it. If that's your attitude, I'm just leaving. Go off and do your own thing. I'll find somebody else. That's not what happens. Let's look and see what happens here. Verse 9, so the Lord said to him, bring me a heifer, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, along with a dove and a young pigeon. Pretty much had all the food groups covered there. Abram brought all these to him, cut them in two, and arranged the halves opposite each other. The birds, however, he did not cut in half. Then birds of prey came down on the carcasses, but Abram drove them away. As the sun was setting, Abram fell into a deep sleep. A thick and dreadful darkness came over him. Then the Lord said to him, know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in the country, not their own, and they will be enslaved and mistreated there. But I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterward they will come out with great possessions. Stop there because I overran my slide. So what God is doing here is when people would make a contract with each other at this time within Abram's culture, and they wanted it to be an unbreakable contract, one with no loopholes, unlike us, who we try to keep loopholes in there, they would set up two altars on either side. They would take their sacrifices and split them, one half over here, one half over here, one half to your God, one half to my God. And then they would walk through in between these sacrifices as they're being burned. And what that was saying was, my alliance is with you, my contract is with my God. If I break my contract, my God will destroy me. That's what the vision was there, what the meaning of this is. So God is using something that Abram is familiar with to get him to understand where he is with God. Okay, so Abram gets these sacrifices together, and of course the birds of prey want in on the thing. He's having to keep them off. And then in chapter 12, a sleep and a darkness comes over Abram. And it could be God did that, probably did, or he could just been tired from keeping the birds away. But I think it's more like God did with Adam. He gives him a sleep and a darkness. Okay, so he's sleeping. The sun has gone down now. Here we go. And then the Lord said to him, verse 13, know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in the country not their own, and that they will be enslaved and mistreated there. I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterward they will come out with great possessions. All right. I had read this for years and years and years and years and years. Yes, I'm old. And it never hit me until, a couple of years ago. God is saying that these people are going to go into slavery. And of course, I'd always read that and always been taught, well, God's just saying what actually happens up here, because we know they do go into slavery for 400 years. But why is God allowing them to go into slavery? These are God's people. These are Abraham's descendants. Why is God putting them into slavery? Was it to show off power by freeing them? That's what I've heard some pastors say, that God just wanted to, get these people into slavery and then show off how big and powerful he was against the Egyptian gods and free them. No, that's not it. That's not why God would do that. How about to give us a picture of our condition in sin? Well, yes, it does give us a picture. I mean, you're enslaved to sin and then God frees you. But that's not it, because that would just be ridiculous to put people in slavery for 400 years and then free them just to give us a picture of something they didn't understand in the first place. So why? Well, we've already seen part of it. Give me a second. I'm going to leave you hanging. Remember how Abram was treating his slave. You are my property. I own you. I own your son. I will take your son to be my son. We already see that Abram's view of slavery is that these people are not really people. They are beneath me. They are my property. I can do with them whatever I want to. And so this is a prophecy by God saying your family is going into slavery. What is the purpose of prophecy? It is to change the way you live right now. And if these people had changed the way that they had treated slaves, this prophecy wouldn't have happened. But God, I think, already knew they ain't changing. In fact, they get even worse to where they're putting their own family into slavery. So God is saying, your family's going into slavery for 400 years to change the way they treat others. They are going to understand better than anybody else what slaves go through, what it is like to be a slave. And they're going to hopefully treat their slaves better. And when they come out, God gives them these rules and regulations about their slaves that are very humane and actually kind of force them not to have slaves. Okay? So why is he putting them into slavery for 400 years? Because he wants them to change the way that they treat people. They are representatives, or to be representatives of the kingdom of God on earth. And God does not have slaves. And God loves everyone. So he does not put anyone down. So if you're going to be God's representatives, then you do away with slavery. You do not put people down. You lift them up. And when you look at the rules later on, this type of slavery you're talking about lifts people up because it gives them a way to pay off debts. That's the slavery that God wants them to have. Verse 15. You, Abram, however, will go to your ancestors in peace and be buried at a good old age. So Abram's going to die. In the fourth generation, your descendants will come back here, for the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure. So I didn't do it, honest. So 4 generations before returning to Canaan, we're not sure exactly how that works, but at least 400 years, etc. They're going to be in the land of Egypt, and then they'll come back and return to Canaan. What's the holdup? The sin of the Amorites has not reached its full measure. God is giving the Amorites, the people who are in the land, time to repent, to turn to God, to do away with their idols and worship God. And you say, well, how's that going to happen? Well, they have the testimony of Abram right now. They have the testimony of Melchizedek and his people, and we will see that there are other people that were crying out to God about Sodom. So there were people who worshiped God in Canaan that these Amorites could have listened to and done away with. But when they didn't, when Israel comes in, they're going to push Amorites out. Okay? So God is giving the Amorites a chance before they get displaced. Verse 17, when the sun had set and darkness had fallen, a smoking firepot with a blazing torch appeared and passed between the pieces. Whenever we see fire like this, it's a representation of God. Okay, well, we would see it in Exodus, where God's presence comes to the temple and his fire. He leads the people as a pillar of fire by night, pillar of cloud by day. So whenever we see fire like this, it's a representation of God. When we get into Acts chapter 2, and the little tongues of fire come on people, that was a symbol that God was now on them, was in them. Okay, so God is this smoking fire pot with a blazing torch. And it passed between the pieces. So it went between the 2 altars. On that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram and said, to your descendants, I will get, back up, try again, engage tongue. To your descendants, I give this land from the Wadi of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates, the land of the Kenites, Kenizzites, Kadmonites, Hittites, Perizzites, Rephaites, Amorites, Canaanites, Girgashites, and Jebusites, but not the electrolytes. So God is ratifying this covenant contract with Abram. Who walked between the altars? God, and God only, not Abram. It should have been God and Abram to ratify this. God's saying, this is all on me. There's nothing you can do to make it go away. This is on me. This is going to happen. And then he talks about the descendants coming back and these people being displaced. So God is giving from right in through here is the Wadi of Egypt. It's just a wadi is basically a river that runs dry most of the year until there's some rain, and then it flows. All right. Otherwise, it's dry. So this Wadi of Egypt is down here in this little bend of the Mediterranean Sea, and then the Euphrates is up here, way north. All right, up in this area here, near Haran, where Abram had come from. So all this land is supposed to be for Israel, for Abram's descendants. And you know how much of it they actually end up with? This little part. There's the Sea of Galilee. They go up to Dan, which is around, well, it's Damascus. They head up into Damascus. So here down to probably the Wadi of Egypt. Okay. All this up here is left undone.
Because they didn't do what God told them to do.
They didn't do what God told them to do. And even when they did, they didn't go as far as God wouldn't allow them to go as far as they should. So this promise is still hanging out there. God has promised it to his descendants. They will get it at some point. I don't think it's going to be today. I don't think it's going to be tomorrow. It will be when Jesus returns. Okay. Which could be today or tomorrow, but it's not going to be by human effort that they get that now. It has to be God who gives it to them. So it is easier to see where God is leading when you know where God has been. We know how God has been treating Abram. We know how God treated Abram's doubt. So we know now how God will treat our doubt. He's not going to push us away because we doubt. He will help us get through the doubt. Right? Thank you all very much.